Part 1. You will hear a conversation between a student and a librarian about library membership and research services. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You can answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning. I'd like to register as a new member of the City Central Library.
Good morning, welcome. Are you joining as a general user or as a university-affiliated student?
I'm a postgraduate student at the university nearby. I've heard that gives me some additional privileges.
Indeed it does. University students are entitled to a special category of membership. That means you have access not only to our standard lending collection but also to the archives, the digital research databases, and some extended borrowing rights.
That sounds perfect. What's the first step?
Well, I'll create a membership record for you. But before that, let me outline what the membership includes, so you know exactly what you're signing up for. Many students assume it's just book borrowing, but it's considerably more comprehensive.
Great, I'd like to know the details.
To start with, borrowing privileges. You may check out up to 12 items at a time, which can include books, DVDs, and language learning packs. The standard loan period is 4 weeks, but postgraduate students are allowed an automatic 2-week extension.
So that's 6 weeks in total, unless someone else reserves the book.
Precisely. If another reader requests the book, you'll get a recall notice by email, and then you must return it within 7 days.
Okay, and if I don't?
Overdue fines apply, but they're modest, 50 pence per day for ordinary items. For high-demand materials, such as core textbooks, the fine rises to £1 per day.
Understood. And about the archives, you mentioned that?
Yes, our archives are quite extensive. They hold historical documents, rare manuscripts, and local government records dating back several centuries. Access is by request only, and materials can only be consulted in the supervised reading room.
Can I photograph them?
In most cases, yes, though only without flash. For fragile documents, we may insist on providing you with digital scans instead.
Fair enough. What about study spaces? Are there rooms I can reserve?
Certainly. We have individual study carrels, which are small enclosed desks with power outlets and Wi-Fi. Those can be booked for up to 3 hours at a time. Then we have group study rooms that seat between 4 and 8 people. Those require at least 3 people to reserve.
And if I need one for just myself, would that be possible?
Not in a group room, I'm afraid. But you can always use a carrel or one of the silent zones on the upper floors.
Makes sense. Now I've heard of interlibrary loans. How does that work here?
An excellent service, though not always well understood. If our library doesn't hold a book or journal, we can request it from another institution. The waiting time varies. Sometimes just a few days, sometimes 2 weeks. Articles are often delivered electronically, while whole books arrive in print.
Is there a charge?
Yes, a modest one, £3 per request for students. However, if it's purely for dissertation research, you may apply for a waiver.
Very useful. Does that include overseas libraries?
Occasionally, yes, though that depends on agreements. Requests from North America are fairly quick. From Asia, it may be slower.
Interesting. And do I need to provide exact details?
The more complete the citation, the faster we can process it. Title, author, edition, and ISBN if possible. Vague requests tend to get delayed.
Understood. This is all very clear so far.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now, listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Thanks for clarifying all that. I'd like to ask a few more specific questions, if that's all right.
Of course, go ahead.
Suppose I'm away on fieldwork and can't return books on time, what should I do?
In such cases, we recommend returning all items before you leave, and then making use of our postal service. We can mail books to UK addresses. If you're overseas, we provide digital resources only.
And renewals, can I do those online?
Absolutely, you can renew through the website, at the self-service machines, or even over the phone. But there is a limit of 3 renewals per item. After that, the system will block you from extending further.
Good to know. Now about copying material. If I need a large section of a government report, can I copy it myself?
You may, but remember copyright law. We allow up to 10% of a book or one chapter, whichever is greater. For very large reports, we recommend our scanning service, 50 pages free per month, with a small fee for additional pages.
That will be helpful. And in the study rooms, are drinks allowed?
Only bottled water. Hot drinks, even in flasks, are prohibited. Food can only be eaten in the ground floor cafe.
And what about Wi-Fi strength? I sometimes need to join online seminars.
Wi-Fi is strong enough, yes, but video calls are discouraged in group rooms. For that purpose, we suggest the Media Lab, which is sound insulated.
Excellent. During exam season, do you extend the hours?
We do. Normally the library closes at 9 p.m. on weekdays, but in May and June we remain open until midnight. Saturdays also have extended hours, until 10 p.m.
I imagine it gets very crowded.
Indeed, the silent study areas fill quickly after lunch. Many students arrive when we open at 8 a.m. to secure a spot.
Makes sense. Back to interlibrary loans. If another library refuses to lend, what happens?
Sometimes we can negotiate a reference-only loan, meaning the book arrives here but cannot leave the building. Otherwise, we may arrange for you to consult it at the holding library itself.
And scanned materials. You mentioned chapters or articles. Do I need special software to access them?
No, we deliver them as standard PDF files, usually by secure email link. They remain accessible for 30 days.
Very convenient. Finally, if I want to use archival photographs in a presentation, not for publication, do I need written permission?
Not for internal academic use. We simply ask that you credit City Central Library Archives collection in your slides. Publication requires a formal license though.
Understood. This has been extremely informative.
Part 2. You will hear a guide giving a talk to a group of students about recent renovations in the university's Humanities building. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen and answer questions 11 to 16.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Humanities building. You'll be spending a lot of time here over the next few years, so I'd like to walk you through the changes we've made during the recent renovation. We'll begin at the entrance hall. Previously, it was gloomy and not very welcoming. We've now installed a glass front with sliding doors that allows sunlight to stream in. and the dull flooring has been replaced with eco-friendly bamboo panels. The effect is much brighter and more open. Moving on, the lecture theatre has been completely modernized. The old rigid rows of wooden benches are gone. Instead, we've introduced movable seating and desks, which can be rearranged depending on the format of the lecture or event. Alongside that, the theatre is now fitted with advanced audio-visual equipment, including multiple projectors, surround sound speakers, and wireless microphones. The computer lab has also seen dramatic changes. It used to be in the basement with little ventilation. Now it's been relocated to the second floor, with large windows providing fresh air and natural light. The computers themselves are new, with dual screens, faster processors, and ergonomic chairs for comfort. As for the seminar rooms, these were often criticized for being noisy and dull. We've now soundproofed the walls to prevent interruptions from nearby corridors, and we've installed flexible partitions that allow two small rooms to be merged into one larger teaching space. Let's talk about the library area. Before, it was cramped and disorganized. We've expanded it with wider aisles and better lighting. Plus, we've added digital cataloging stations to make finding materials easier. There's also a quiet lounge with soft seating and soundproof study pods for students who prefer silence. Finally, the cafeteria. It used to be a small counter that served little more than coffee and sandwiches. Now it has been completely redesigned as a full dining hall, offering hot meals, a salad bar, and vegetarian and vegan options. Self-service kiosks make ordering much faster, and the food service now extends late into the evening.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now that you know about the physical improvements, let me explain some of the rules for using the facilities. These may seem strict, but they help us maintain order and fairness. First, the lecture theatre. If student groups want to use the space for events, they cannot just walk in and rearrange the seats. Because the chairs and desks are movable, misuse could easily cause damage. So now, you must go through the official booking system to request permission. The computer lab is another area with clear rules. The new software and licenses are provided strictly for academic purposes. That means no installing your own programs, no downloading pirated material, and no using university systems for commercial work. Any violation results in suspension of your lab account. With the seminar rooms, students are welcome to book them for study groups. But there's a restriction. A minimum of 3 students is required to make a booking. This policy prevents individuals from occupying entire rooms when group demand is high. Finally, access to the building during exam season. The Humanities building remains open 24 hours a day during the last 3 weeks of term. However, security is a priority. After 10 p.m., the doors are locked, and students can only enter using their student ID card. Without it, security will not allow you inside.
Part 3. You will hear a conversation between a tutor and two students discussing their group research project. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
All right, Alice and Mark, let's begin by reviewing the initial stages of your project. I'd like you to reflect honestly on how the teamwork developed. At the start, what challenges did you face?
Well, in the very first week, things didn't run smoothly at all. Everyone arrived with strong opinions, and instead of cooperating, it felt as though people were competing. We spent ages arguing about who should set the direction.
Exactly. It wasn't that people were deliberately confrontational, but too many tried to take the lead at once. You know when everyone talks over each other and you lose track of the actual issue? That's how it was.
Yes, and because of that, decisions were painfully slow. For example, it took us 3 long meetings before we even agreed on the research question.
So the process was rather inefficient in the beginning?
Definitely. But on the other hand, all that back and forth did push us to refine our focus. Initially, our idea was far too narrow, almost simplistic. The disagreements forced us to reconsider and broaden the scope, which ultimately gave us a stronger angle.
I'd agree with that. Though it was frustrating, it meant that we didn't just rush into the first idea.
And how about the participation of different members? Did everyone contribute equally?
Not at all. The louder members, myself included, I'll admit, ended up dominating. Some students, like James, barely spoke in the first 2 sessions.
That's true. But interestingly, when James finally did speak up, his contribution was incredibly useful. He spotted a flaw in our draft questionnaire that none of us had noticed. Without his comment, we'd have collected unworkable data.
That's a valuable insight. Sometimes the quieter voices offer the sharpest observations. Did you manage to adjust your approach after noticing this imbalance?
Yes. After week 3, we introduced a system where the role of chairperson rotated each meeting. Whoever chaired was responsible for making sure everyone had a chance to speak.
And we also introduced time limits on discussions, because otherwise we would argue endlessly. Once we limited each issue to 10 minutes, we became far more productive.
Good strategies. So overall, despite the rocky beginning, you ended up working more effectively.
Yes, though I'd say we could still improve how we handle conflict.
That's something you can keep developing. Now, moving on to the research stage. How did you approach gathering information?
Well, we started by dividing up the tasks. Each of us had to check different types of sources. I volunteered to review the latest academic journals. That was a bit overwhelming because the volume of articles was enormous. But it was worthwhile, since I found several pieces of cutting-edge research we could cite.
Meanwhile, I looked into government reports and statistical databases. They provided really solid background, But the challenge was that the statistics were often outdated. Some of the most recent figures were 3 years old, which made it harder to argue that our analysis reflected current trends.
And how did you deal with that?
I decided to supplement the official data with material from professional associations, which publish annual reports. Those weren't peer-reviewed in the same way, but they offered fresher numbers.
That's a sensible compromise. What about case studies or interviews?
Yes, one of our members contacted practitioners in the field and carried out 2 short interviews. That gave us a more human perspective, which balanced out the heavy statistics.
Though to be honest, not everyone agreed those interviews were reliable. Some thought they were too anecdotal.
That's an important point. Anecdotal evidence can add color, but it shouldn't be the foundation of your argument. Did you use any visual material?
Yes, we incorporated charts and graphs. I created a few infographics that summarized the statistical trends. They made the presentation more engaging, though I worried they oversimplified the data.
But actually, those visuals helped us clarify patterns. It's easy to get lost in raw numbers, but the graphs made the key message stand out.
So overall, your approach combined journals, official reports, association data, interviews, and visuals. That's quite a range. Looking back, which of these sources do you think was most valuable?
For me, the peer-reviewed journals, they were demanding to read, but they gave us credibility.
I'd say the professional reports. They might not have been as rigorous, but they provided the most up-to-date statistics, which really strengthened our argument.
Good. You've clearly reflected carefully on the strengths and weaknesses of each type of source.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 25 to 30.
All right, that covers your teamwork and your research strategies. Now, as part of the assessment, I also need to provide individual feedback on each group member. I've looked carefully at your logs and presentation notes, so I'll share my impressions, and you can see if they match your own reflections. Let's start with James. Although he was rather quiet during meetings, when he did contribute, it was precise and extremely valuable. His comments often identified problems that others had overlooked. I'd describe his role as quietly analytical. He wasn't the loudest voice, but his interventions prevented major errors.
Yes, I completely agree. James seemed reserved, but he always had something insightful to add.
Next, there's Hannah. She consistently produced detailed summaries after each meeting. That might sound like a routine task, but her notes were so thorough that they became the backbone of the group's coordination. Whenever there was confusion, people referred back to Hannah's records. Without her diligence, I suspect you would have lost track of decisions and deadlines.
That's absolutely true. Her notes kept us organized.
Now, let's consider Sophie. She was enthusiastic and brimming with creative ideas. At times, however, she introduced suggestions that were slightly unrealistic. For instance, she proposed arranging a nationwide survey, which was admirable but clearly beyond your resources. Still, her creativity pushed the group to think more ambitiously, which is never a bad thing.
Yes, she was definitely the ideas person.
Then we have Daniel. He brought strong technical skills, particularly when it came to designing visuals and formatting the slides. His infographics made the presentation much clearer. That said, Daniel sometimes got caught up in the design elements at the expense of content. I had to remind him that polished slides mean little without solid analysis.
That's fair. We sometimes had to redirect him back to the research itself.
Moving on to Priya. I was impressed by her persistence in chasing up external contacts. She was the one who secured those 2 practitioner interviews. Not everyone appreciated the anecdotal evidence, but the effort she put into arranging those conversations demonstrated initiative and determination.
Yes, she worked really hard on that part.
Finally, Tom. He had an interesting role. On the one hand, he occasionally missed deadlines and was less consistent in attendance. On the other hand, when he did deliver, his work was well argued and original. It was frustrating to wait for him, but his eventual contributions had depth. He's a classic case of quality over quantity, though reliability is just as important in teamwork.
That's exactly how I'd describe him. Unpredictable, but insightful.
Part 4. You will hear a university lecture on the topic of sports and society. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31-40.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll be exploring the role of sports in society, its history, cultural influence, economic significance, and some of the challenges it currently faces. Sports are often thought of as simple entertainment or physical activity, but their impact goes far deeper. They shape identities, influence politics, drive economies, and even serve as a form of soft diplomacy between nations. Let's begin with the historical dimension. From the gladiatorial contests of ancient Rome to the ritual ball games of the Mayans, sports have always carried symbolic weight. They've represented strength, survival, and divine favor. In Greece, the Olympic Games weren't just athletic competitions, they were deeply tied to religion and civic pride. Athletes competed not for money, but for honor, and for the glory of their city-states. Moving forward to the modern era, organized sport as we know it began in the 19th century, particularly in Britain. Football, rugby, and cricket were codified in this period, and soon exported across the British Empire. This spread ensured that sports became not only leisure activities, but also tools of cultural exchange, sometimes reinforcing colonial power structures, sometimes offering colonized people a chance to assert their own identity. Now, let's consider the cultural impact of sport today. For many people, sports teams serve as an extension of community and identity. Supporting a football club, for instance, is not merely about watching players on a field, it's about belonging, about being part of a shared story that spans generations. Fans pass down allegiances like heirlooms, binding families and neighborhoods together. Sport also influences gender norms. For decades, many sports were male-dominated, with women excluded or marginalized. But this is changing. The rise of women's football, the visibility of female athletes at the Olympics, and campaigns for equal pay are shifting perceptions. Nonetheless, significant disparities remain, both in media coverage and financial investment. Economically, the influence of sports is staggering. The global sports industry is estimated to be worth over $500 billion annually, when you include broadcasting rights, sponsorship, merchandise, and tourism. Cities compete fiercely to host mega events like the Olympics or the FIFA World Cup, hoping for economic boosts from infrastructure development and international visitors. Yet these events can be double-edged swords. While they bring prestige, they often saddle host nations with dead and unused stadiums, sometimes called white elephants. Let's not overlook the political dimensions. Sports have frequently been a stage for political expression. The 1968 Black Power salute by American athletes in Mexico City remains one of the most iconic moments in Olympic history. Similarly, the decision to ban South Africa from international competition during apartheid demonstrated how sports can reinforce political pressure. More recently, debates over athletes taking the knee to protest racial injustice show how sports continue to serve as platforms for broader social struggles. Now, what about health and education? Sports undeniably promote physical well-being, combating issues like obesity and cardiovascular disease. But beyond health, they cultivate soft skills, teamwork, discipline, resilience, and strategic thinking. This is why schools worldwide integrate sports into curricula, yet access remains unequal. In many countries, children from poorer backgrounds lack safe spaces to play or cannot afford equipment, while wealthier peers enjoy well-maintained facilities and professional coaching. Sports also reflect technological and scientific advancements. Training today is highly data-driven, involving biomechanics, nutrition, and even artificial intelligence to optimize performance. Controversies around performance-enhancing drugs, however, raise ethical questions. Where do we draw the line between innovation and cheating? Equally pressing are concerns about commercialization. While sponsorship and broadcasting generate revenue, critics argue that sports are increasingly dominated by money rather than passion. Players transfer between clubs for astronomical sums, sometimes losing their connection to local communities. Fans feel priced out by rising ticket costs and exclusive broadcasting deals. And then there's the media dimension. Sports coverage has exploded in the digital age. Social media allows fans direct access to athletes, bypassing traditional journalism. This brings opportunities, such as athlete-led activism, but also risks, including online abuse and toxic fandom. Looking toward the future, several trends stand out. First, the growth of esports, or competitive video gaming, which has attracted millions of viewers and major sponsorship deals. Some question whether esports count as real sports, given their lack of physical exertion, but their popularity and organization mirror traditional competitions. Second, the increasing urgency of sustainability. Sports events generate significant carbon footprints through travel, construction, and energy use. As climate change worsens, leagues and governing bodies will be under pressure to adapt, perhaps by reducing air travel, building greener stadiums, or hosting fewer mega events. Third, the future of inclusion. This means not only promoting gender equality, but also ensuring opportunities for people with disabilities, minority groups, and those from disadvantaged backgrounds. The Paralympics have already transformed perceptions of disability and athletic excellence, but more remains to be done at the grassroots level. So to summarize, sport is far more than play. It is history, identity, politics, economics, technology, and culture, all rolled into one. Its influence is immense, but its future will depend on how well it balances commercial interests with fairness, inclusivity, and sustainability.